Hey everybody, welcome to the very first show of Money Matters. I'm Lisa Robinson and I am your multinational money strategist, aka your accounting best friend, and I am here to talk to you about the ins and outs of the VAT tax. And I know everybody has been stressing over it or just been plain out ignoring it. But I wanted to make sure that everybody got all of the facts and knew exactly what's expected and what platforms will comply, and just get all the information because there is a lot of misinformation out there. And I don't want y'all to lose your business or get in trouble, or I don't also want you to just plain out ignore it because it is pretty serious. I am first going to let you know that I am working very hard with the other VAT campaign teams and the core and advisors teams, and we are pushing for changes. But in the meantime, things need to be done in order for all of us to comply, so that we don't get in trouble, because there are other countries that are talking about following them. And for all of my United States entrepreneurs, the United States is one of the ones that is talking about doing it. So this is really important to comply or us push for the changes. VAT tax, the best way I can compare it is to how the United States charges sales tax right now, and the new tax that the United States is charging to online entrepreneurs, which is the fair marketplace tax. Fortunately for us online entrepreneurs, that tax doesn't reach us unless you sell over $100,000 or $1 million, over $100,000 online. So most of us are exempt from it. However, the VAT tax, there is no threshold. So if you sell $5 overseas to someone in the UK, someone in Europe, you're going to have to charge the VAT tax. Here's the catch. The VAT tax, there is no straight percentage. It's also based off of where the buyer is located. And there are a lot of rules that you're supposed to do to comply with, one of them being register for the VAT and filing quarterly taxes. One of the things I can tell you is this is for digital services only right now. And please don't make the mistake of thinking that if you just have a Facebook group, that's enough to comply, where you won't have, or excuse me, will be enough to where you would be exempt from it, and that your digital service would no longer be digital. Although there were a couple of 28, there's 28 EU countries in the European Commission, and although there were a couple of them that said yes, that would be enough, there were a bunch of them that said no. So it's based off of which country you're actually selling into. So if you sell into the UK and they say, okay, Facebook group is enough, you're fine. But if you sell into another country, like Germany or somewhere else, and they say no, then you're now liable for that tax. Excuse me. Digital services, what that actually includes is anything and everything. Basically what it means is if you sell anything online with no minimal contact, no human intervention, as the European Commission called it. This can include ebooks, this can include gaming, music downloads, online accounting, online journals, PDF products, remote maintenance, software, taped webinars, telecommunications, training material, video on demand, web advertising, web hosting, the list can go on and on. The biggest thing to remember is if it has no human intervention or minimal human intervention, then you are liable. No human intervention by the European Commission means that where the sale of the digital contact is entirely automatic, or automated. For example, say I'm a customer and I go into your site and I click the buy now button on your website. I'm buying a PDF book. The content automatically downloads onto my phone, tablet, computer, whatever, as soon as I put in my credit card and I hit pay. Or I receive an automated email containing the content. In both of these cases, the VAT tax would come into play because these would constitute an e-service due to there being no human contact whatsoever. Minimal human intervention basically means the sale of the digital contact is mostly automated, and the small amount of manual process that is involved does not change the nature of the supply from an e-service. So for example, say you're a customer and you go to my site and you click buy now, and me, the vendor, receives a notification. I click a button, which then produces an email that I pre-populated already with my details and or with your details, excuse me, containing content, etc., was sent to you. Or me, the vendor, receives a notification and I click a button which produces an email pre-populated with all of the details, and then I attach the content and send an email by clicking the send button. In both of those cases, according to the EU Commission, this would constitute as an e-service because there was minimal human contact, and therefore the VAT tax would come into play. Now, the good news on this is there are several third-party platforms that have come to the rescue and have said, hey, we will take care of the VAT tax for you. What that means is instead of selling your PDF book or your course or your crochet patterns or wherever it may be on your website yourself, if you will to put it on to their site, they will handle the VAT tax for you. You won't have to register for the MOS. You won't have to do any of that. And here again, I skipped a part. You're going to say, Lisa, what's the MOS? VAT MOS is basically a mini one-stop shop. What that means is for all of us non-EU sellers, because we're not part of a European country, we can register for VAT, VAT tax, and register for the MOS by choosing a particular one country state that we want to basically register with. So say, for example, most of us would probably do it in the UK because they're English speaking. We would go to the UK MOS site and we would register. Here's the catch. Once you register for the VAT tax, once you register for that VAT registration, you will be required immediately every quarter to submit a VAT tax return. Again, if you register, you will be required to submit a VAT tax return. I want that to stick into everybody's heads because I don't want you running off and registering if you have another avenue of selling $10, $15, whatever percentage you have. A lot of clients that I've talked to, their percentage of sale is 2%, 1%, 5%. But at the same time, I don't want you blocking sales to the European countries because it's not the buyer's fault. They didn't set these rules into place. The rules were set up in place because the countries are losing a lot of revenue from their tax that they charge due to the online industry. Let's face it, a lot of people have gone to selling or having their business, excuse me, online. I've got a business online. All of y'all do, obviously, because y'all are watching this. So they're losing a lot of revenue. The United States is one of them, and they are talking about following suit and doing a type of VAT tax. So is Canada, so is Australia. So when I say that this is serious, I mean it. I've done a lot of digging, and again, I'm part of a core support group, a core advisors, that we are pushing for a lot of changes. We've made some, and we're pushing for more. We are pushing for a threshold. But it's still important to understand the rules and the complexities, and to understand that if all the countries are going to follow suit, there's a chance that they could actually monitor us, or not monitor us, but actually be able to come and make us be liable. So it's just really important. Some of the places that will handle the VAT tax for you is Udemy, Paddle, PayHip, Digital Goods Store, Fast Spring, and all of these, so the ones I'm listing again, will handle the VAT tax, file the quarterly tax return. You don't have to register, you don't have to do anything. So it includes the ones I just said. It also includes ClickBank, Amazon Kindle eBooks, Indieso, and that's INDIESEW. Bandcamp, Smashwords, Vive Books, and it's important to know that Vive Books will actually do more or cover more than just books. They have several digital products that they will cover and handle for you, and they handle all of the VAT tax. DIY Crush will also handle the VAT tax. Now, it's important to understand that because you are using that third-party platform, you're going to have to pay them a commission. But here's my thing. Some of them are higher, some of them are lower. I am doing a list of that list that I just gave you. I am actually compiling information on them to basically list what the percentage is and give the information of everything that they'll handle, because some places or some of them only handle certain products. And I will be releasing that and uploading it onto my my Facebook group, which is Financially Balanced, and I will also send it out on my mailing list, and then I will from there share it with everyone else, so that you're aware of what their percentages are and you have it all in one place. Or at least it will be as of that date that it's done. Of course, it can always change. But the reason why I'm doing that is because I want you to understand that, okay, say PayHip is 5% of whatever you sell it for. They're going to be handling the VAT tax. One, you're not going to have to register. Two, you're not going to have to file a VAT tax return or hire an accountant like me to handle the VAT tax return for you. And you're not going to have to keep up with the requirements that you have to keep the data for the 10 years that the European Commission is requiring. So they're actually saving you a lot more money in a lot of those cases than the percentage they're actually charging. So in my opinion, it's really worth looking into, especially if the percentage that you sell to the European states is not very high. Of course, the commission that they get is a tax deductible for you as a write-off because it's a business expense. So that is something else to take into consideration, especially for the United States entrepreneurs. That would be considered a business expense, so therefore it would be a tax write-off. There are several places that are starting to comply. Etsy is one of them. It's important to note that the last time I saw any documentation on Etsy, Etsy was saying that they would comply as far as handling the VAT tax for the European countries only. What they released was, as far as the non-European countries and the VAT tax, was that they were still researching it and they would let us know what they would be handling, because they were trying to figure out what was required. I have not heard anything. I will double check again to see if there's an update, but as far as anything being posted, I myself have not heard anything. So they did come back and say that they would comply, but again, that's mainly for the European countries. eBay is, if I'm not mistaken, is basically saying they're not going to sell to the European countries. I would have to double check on that one. Comicsy and there are several different ones that are actually saying that they will not comply. It's important to understand. Folksy is one of them. and Craftsy. I'm not sure if those two have changed. I would have to double check, and it would be worth for you checking to see if maybe they've come around. One of the things that's important to understand is PayPal is not a third-party vendor. PayPal is a platform to accept money. So they don't have to comply with the VAT tax. You are still responsible because they don't list your products. You send an invoice through them. So therefore, you're still liable for that VAT tax. Now, I do know that they're trying to make some changes as far as to help list the VAT tax on the invoice for their vendors if y'all decide you want to do it like yourselves on your website. That is another option. There are several plugins that have been created by several of the people that are also in the core advisor group that you can download onto your website yourself, and it gathers the information for you and helps determine where the buyer is. That is an option. I can actually recommend a couple of them, and if that is something you're interested in, then please shoot me a message on Facebook. You can find my business page at Balance Tax Services, but shoot me a message and I can get you that information. I don't have it right on hand, but I know that there are a couple of plugins. Only reason I'm not having that information here and actually recommending it is because majority of the people I've talked to just don't sell enough to the European countries to actually handle the VAT tax themselves, much less download a plugin and put it in and then gather all that data. So that's the main reason why I don't actually have that information. But if you decide you want it, I would be glad to send you that information. One of the things I want to talk about is the myths, because I've heard so many people in the United States say, this is not going to affect me. I'm going to ignore it. How can they come after me? How are they going to find me? I'm online. Look, it's the government. I don't care where you are. The government's the government. Plain and simple, if the other countries are going to follow, and because of the OECD that it's been put into place and so many of the countries are buying into, other countries are looking at following, and the United States is one of them. And because of that, it is possible that they could come and make you liable. But with the government, I wouldn't take the chance. I don't know if they would actually find someone that sells only $5 and $10, or they would only pay attention to the ones who sell more than that. Plain and simple, the European Commission actually admitted that they screwed up. They didn't take into consideration how many online solo entrepreneurs there were. They were going after the bigwigs. They wanted Amazon. They wanted the other bigwigs. That's where they wanted the money. They didn't want to actually go after the mom and pops who worked from home and that kind of thing. They thought they were leveling the playing field, and when in actuality, all they did was give away for all these bigger companies to make more money and hurt us and put some of us out of business. It's been very disheartening because I've heard several people, they're not releasing their programs that they've worked so hard on. They're not releasing their e-courses. They're not releasing their e-book because they're scared, and then they don't know what to do. And then there are others, which is just as disheartening, is they're blocking sales to the EU countries. And I just don't think that's right either. And then you got some that are just ignoring it. And as a multinational accountant, I cannot advise you to do that. I will tell you that I'm working on an ebook, which was actually a reference book, a reference sheet before. It's on the VAT tax. I'm working on turning it into an ebook. And if I decide to sell it, I'm going to make sure it's listed on a third-party platform to make sure I comply, at least until we can get something put into place. Now, The good news is that there are ways to release your e-course, to launch it, and to launch it to where, as of right now, it would be not considered a digital service or a digital sale, so you would be exempt. One of the way, or the biggest way, and the way I am suggesting, is you have to have more than minimal. So you've got to have enough human intervention or human interaction, what I call it, with your buyers in order for it to not be considered digital. So what I recommend, excuse me, for the ones that do the e-courses, to have a private Facebook group, not your regular Facebook group that you have with people on your list, and you know there may not be clients and some are clients. A private Facebook group that, say for example, I come and I buy your e-course, okay, I pay you and it downloads. When you advertise that e-course to me, excuse me, it should automatically say that part of the price includes a Facebook group, a private Facebook group, and you don't actually wait for me to join it. As soon as I buy it, I should be automatically put in it because it's supposed to be part of the program. Your second thing, because the Facebook group is not going to be just enough, is to also offer, or excuse me, to also have a monthly live webinar or a monthly live Q&A hangout. You need to have it every month, and it needs to be live, and it needs to be part of your package. And here's the biggest thing I can't stress. It's going to be based on your wording. A lot of times when we sell a digital course, we'll put extra bonus. You can be part of a Facebook group. Extra bonus, we'll have a live Q&A. Do not use those words. You need to actually say your price, your e-course, and include the private Facebook group and your live Q&A as part of your package. Because if you don't, some of the European countries could determine that because it was extras, that it wasn't part of the core package, and therefore it was not, it would be digital service and it would be VAT liable. So you want to make sure you word that correctly. I can't stress enough to make sure you do more than just the Facebook group. The Facebook group is not going to be enough. However, if you do the Facebook group and you do the live webinar or the live Q&A, I can't stress enough that you need to be active in it. Just having the group and everybody else being active and you not being in there and you're not answering questions and interacting with them is not going to be enough. It might be for some EU countries, but then for some others it's not going to be enough. The biggest thing is each of the EU countries get to decide on their own what they consider enough and what they don't consider enough. And that's been one of my biggest pet peeves, because the 28 EU countries all came together and they formed these rules, but then they didn't decide a basis on what would be considered correct and what wouldn't be considered correct. And they've been basically determining all on their own without talking among themselves or with each other to determine it. They basically, like I said, for the UK, they'll say, yes, this is enough. Excuse me. And for another country, they're saying it's not. So in my advice for the non-EU countries, since we don't have a EU country to back us up and help us along the way, is to make sure you have more than enough. So I can't recommend making sure you have more than just your private Facebook group, and also just have more than your monthly live Q&A. I think if you have both, that should give more than a minimal, and I think it'll be good. Also, if you sell your some people say, okay, well, what if I later on, I do a live webinar? If you do a live webinar, and you're selling your live webinar, that is not VAT liable. However, if you've taped it and then you later put it on your site directly and you sell it taped, it is VAT liable. One of the things I recommend is check out some of the third-party platforms, because some of them handle that and you can sell it on there. Some of their commissions are higher than others. Like I said, I'm in the process of getting that information. But again, you will be VAT liable if you sell to any of the EU countries. Okay, so basically, I want to talk about the myths, because I've heard I've heard several people in the past that I've talked to have said, this doesn't belong to me, that kind of thing. So we're going to go over some myths. Myth number one: the non-EU myth number one, excuse me, non-EU businesses are beyond the scope of these new EU digital services. Wrong. One of the key drivers behind these new rules is been to clamp down on the non-EU businesses avoiding the VAT tax and not paying the correct share. In all honesty, since 2003, the non-EU countries have been liable, and that includes the United States. There was a regulation in place since 2003. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't even know about it until now. But the big wigs like Amazon and some of the other places did know about it, and they found a way to get around paying the higher of the tax. And of course, this made the European Commission mad. So if you think it does not apply to you because you're not in the European country, please understand it does. If you're in Canada, if you're in Australia, if you're in the United States, those are three of the places that are talking about following suit. Japan is also talking about it. So it's really important, again, I can't stress it enough, that you understand that you are liable. Myth number two: my turnover is too small to worry about the VAT tax. I won't be caught. This is not true. There is, as of now, there is absolutely no threshold. In the UK, there was a threshold before, but now, as of January 1st, 2015, the UK doesn't even have a threshold. However, for the non-EU countries, we never had a threshold since 2003. So technically, we were all liable since 2003 to be paying a VAT tax. However, none of us knew about it. Majority of us did not know about it. Some did, but majority of us didn't. But as of right now, if you sell directly to a customer and not a business that's in the EU, and you're outside, your home jurisdiction is outside of the EU country, then you must register for VAT and you must charge the VAT tax. And again, that's based on where the consumer is, where their permanent address is, and there's information you're supposed to get. So it does apply to everybody. It doesn't matter if you sell $2, it doesn't matter if you sell $15, it doesn't matter if you sell $1,500. From one on up, if you sell anything, they're considering it liable. Myth number three: I can just declare that all my digital services are business to business, and then I won't have to worry about it. How are the tax authorities going to be able to prove me wrong? No, you simply cannot do this. The tax authorities are requiring, with the new rules in place, that you must prove that they are a business. And one of the only ways you can prove that is if they have a VAT tax registration number. If they don't have a VAT tax registration number, then you have to assume they are a consumer in the European country and not a business, and therefore you must must charge a VAT tax because it's liable. So that is a myth. It's not going to work. Myth number 4. I will now have to register for VAT in every single country where I supply digital services. Believe it or not, I thought the same thing. This is wrong too. Again, it's because I told you that this was the precise reason that they created the mini one-stop shop, which is called MOS. It was created to allow the VAT registered businesses to select one tax authority that we can declare all of our VAT tax on their EU sales. And this eliminates the need to register in all the EU countries. And whatever country you select, say you select UK, you charge that, and then the UK sends out that money for you. So again, you don't have to register in every single country. Myth number 5. I can be audited at any time by any EU tax authority. Or how am I going to know if they're going to audit me? One, I can't tell you that you're going to be audited at any time. This is not true. However, the exact process for the audits has not yet been determined. The HMRC's Andrew Rebb that spoke at a recent tax webinar, or Taximo webinar, excuse me, stated that the coordination of the audits will be a matter between the EU member states. That basically says that they are still working on it. Me, as a multinational accountant, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to put anything past the governments. Anything's possible. Whether or not they will actually come after all of us, or they're going to stay after the big wigs, I don't know. My biggest concern is making sure that you understand what the rules are, and that you that you're like, that you comply, and that you understand that there are right now some options. Please also understand that as of right now, the options I gave you will work as far as being exempt from it being a digital service. However, if they push for the physical products, like they're doing right now with the digital service products, you need to understand that what I've told you will be null and void. Because once they push, if it's released and they push for the physical products, that means every single thing that you sell on online, book, whatever it is, or physical, will automatically be liable for VAT tax if they push for the physical. They're talking about it, rumored that it was supposed to be sometime next year. However, we're hoping, the core advisor teams are hoping, that because we're pushing and making such a stink of things, and we're letting them know how bad choices they made and how they didn't do all their homework, and they didn't think this thoroughly through. We're hoping that because of that, it'll delay it, and we can continue to push for some changes before it does. So hopefully, if we get the threshold on the digital services, we'll be able to get it on the physical products as well. So therefore, we won't have to worry about it. But you need to still know that as of right now, without that threshold, if they were to release the physical products and push for that regulation to go through next year with no threshold, then everything I've just told you is null and void as far as the webinar, the live webinar, or the live Q&A, and the Facebook group, because even if it's considered physical, it will still be liable. So I want you to just realize that. One of the things I can tell you, the consequences, Again, it's the government. If they get the governments to come back and say, agree to help them, you need to understand what the penalty is. Um, Basically, down to the nitty gritty, not complying can cost you greatly. Um, the penalty is based on each individual EU country. Again, so and it was based on which one you actually broke the law with and didn't pay the VAT tax. Um, so, like for example, excuse me, for the majority of the countries, the penalty includes twice the amount of the VAT tax that's unpaid without any upper capping limit in Denmark and Belgium, and 50% of the VAT due in Spain. Then there are other EU member countries that have an upper limit of monetary fines of up to $155,600, and that's in American dollars. So $155,600 American dollars. So again, instead of blocking or not doing anything, check out some of those third-party platforms, even if it's just temporarily until we get the threshold. Because 9 and 10 times we're going to get the threshold and you won't have to worry about it. But do you really want to play the chance of the government being able to or not being able to? I'm sorry, but I don't want to owe anybody $155,000. I don't sell enough to the European countries to worry about whether or not I'm going to get caught and have to be fined $155,000. So to me, it's worth checking out the third-party platforms for those digital parts. Or for right now, making sure I have enough human interaction to where I'm exempt for now. The good news is I have made it my mission to stay actively involved. And I have made promises to several people, and I'm going to make the promise to you that you're listening to my show now. I will keep you up to date with any changes. Whether that means the threshold comes, they all of a sudden change something, whatever changes it may be, I will keep you up to date. The two best ways to do that is to either go to my website and join my mailing list or join my Facebook group. That will just be the easiest way for me to make sure that I'm able to reach you to give you any changes. The good news is if you are on my Facebook group, I will also give you tax tips, and that won't matter where you're at. I give tax tips for US right now. I'm also, excuse me, in the works of doing UK tax tips and Australia and Canada and various other countries. I am also going to be doing accounting tips for all of the different countries as well. So it's not just for the VAT tax. So you might want to think about being involved in that. The other thing is the the EU VAT campaign group is an active group for anybody that wants to learn everything and anything and has questions and needs help or whatever to understand. You're more than welcome to ask to join that group. The more the merrier. We want to make sure everyone is involved that wants to be involved. So those are things that you can take into you can go and do and and be able to learn more. I want to also make a note that if you have questions and you're not sure what would work or what you need to do as far as yours goes, I have been offering a free 30-minute consultation for those that need some assistance. I will tell you, because I'm in the middle of tax season and I'm also in the middle of reconciling a couple of clients' accounting books, that I am limited only to maybe two or three spots a week to do those free consultations, but I am offering them. If you would like to have one, or if you have questions, or if you want to talk to me, please go to my website to the contact me and fill that out. And I'll hook up with you and we'll figure out a time, and we can talk. Or you can also email me at contact@balancedtaxservices.com. And if you just got a question, you want to get clarification on something, I'll be glad to shoot you an email back. I do my best to answer my emails within 24 hours. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but I do my best to do it within 24 hours. Well, y'all, I hope y'all found this informational. I hope you found it to be helpful. I hope you understand the seriousness of it and that you won't just ignore it, and that you also won't block the EU country sales. But I hope that it helped you. But in the meantime, thank you for watching my very first show of Money Matters. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned because the next show is coming up in just a couple of weeks, or 3-4 weeks, and it will be on probably the basic of accounting. But stay tuned. I will make sure everyone is aware of what that next episode is going to be about. Thanks, and have a great night.